Did we just lose somebody or did my screen change? I think we just lost somebody.
Yes, Commissioner Hedge just
I
dropped off.
I just started the recording, so.
All right, let's give it one more minute so we can maybe rejoin if he lost his connection or something.
That's fine. Let's look. Not sure what happened.
We need at least one more commissioner for a quorum. Oh, there we have Commissioner O'Mayan.
There we go.
Okay, then let's go ahead and get started. Would you please do roll call?
Vice Chair Delagny, Commissioner Hedge, Commissioner Humayun,
Here.
Commissioner Liu, Chair Texler,
Here.
Commissioner Van Rees,
Here.
Commissioner Whedon.
Here.
I see Commissioner Hedge joined us as well.
Yep, sorry, I had an audio problem.
No problem.
Okay, so let the record show Commissioner Vice Chair Delagny and Commissioner Liu are absent. Commissioner Hedge, Commissioner Humayun, Chair Texler, Commissioner Van Rees, and Commissioner Whedon are present.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for your flexibility in having our meeting tonight. I wanted to first give our new commissioners, we have Carl and Tom, want to welcome you to the commission. And, I know it's a little bit of a, learn on the job, learn as you go. But I'd love to just have each of you do a 2-minute quick summary introduction of who you are and kind of your area of interest as it relates to the commission. So Tom, would you like to go first, please?
Sure. As is obvious, my name is Tom Hecht. I have been a Los Altos resident for almost 20 years, almost 21 years actually. I have 3 kids in the school system, or actually one is graduated and in college, but 2 others at Mountain View High School. My interest in the Environmental Commission really stems from the fact that immediately prior to this, I've been in the renewable space, mostly on the solar side, but also on the smart home side of things for about 15 years. I entered that industry because I was interested in the environment, and before that I'd worked in the networking and telecom industries and wanted to do something a little more important to me, and so entered the renewable space, and obviously want to carry that interest on in this format, and very interested in electrification of both the residential side and the commercial side, and what we can do as a commission to encourage that, and associated with that also the electrification of transportation. I think electrification is a real way we cut CO2, and I think we can hopefully have an impact on that at the commission level. So hopefully that is what you're hoping for. And
perfect.
Yep.
Thank you. Welcome. We look forward to having you join lots of subcommittees and help with all our work plan. Carl, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, my name is Carl Van Rees. I grew up, well, I didn't grow up here, but I lived here through high school and then came back a couple years ago and now live here. My background is in advertising and marketing. I did that for 6 years in Los Angeles. And so my interest is figuring out how do we reach out to the community, get them involved, and obviously that in particular, I'm interested in active and electrification of transportation, but in general, just reductions of emissions in any way we can find feasible at the local level.
Perfect, great. Well, welcome as well. And we are going to go ahead and run through our agenda. First item, we have our commission minutes from our March 14th meeting. I've looked at them, they look fine to me. Does anybody have any changes? Okay, do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move the approval of the minutes.
Thank you,
It's Don
Don.
Whedon.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Rashina. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so we have approved our minutes. All right, so we have today.
Just wanted to point out Laura Bruno, I see Bruno here as well.
Yes, and we generally note on the minutes when a commissioner joins, if they weren't there for roll call, just note when they join. Welcome, Bruno. right.
Thank you.
So first we have reach codes, which I think we kind of teed up last time that the new reach code cycle is kicking off because we have a building reach code. In order to continue it, we need to city will need to adopt something by January. Yes, Don.
We forgot the public comments for items not on the agenda.
You're right. Thank you. I do see a member of the public. Does anybody wish to speak on something not on the agenda? If so, just unmute yourself and let me know. All right, so move on. Thank you. I always want to skip over that part. So yes, we will need to have the city adopt a new reach code should we want to even continue. You know, one option would be to continue what we currently have, or there would be a host of enhancements. So we're looking at laying out that process because, and the timeline for that, because it's not a huge amount of time to get reach codes enacted, even though we have something currently. You know, we need to have a public outreach element to it, and then there's the discussions as a commission of what we need to be, what we want to recommend to the council, and then developing the appropriate ordinance. So Don has put together the kind of timeline and steps that was included in your packet, and to give us a overview of how we need to keep our plan going. And you'll see that we're looking at you know, having a study session with the council, which would be where we are kind of presenting, conceptually presenting options and getting feedback. So prior to that, we need to be doing public outreach in order to be able to give that feedback and input to the council as well. And then the hope would be, or I think we would need to have the council voting in the August-September timeframe, because then it needs to go, depending on how it's adopted or how the ordinance is written, it would need to go to the CEC for review. And there's also the legal review in the city. So there's a process that takes a while. I think I might stop there and let Don talk a little bit about the, I mean, I will just say we are starting to talk about outreach and picking some public outreach dates. We're currently thinking probably 2 workshops, one in North City, one in South City. And we were working on getting those scheduled in conjunction with support from SVC in terms of having somebody from SVC there to talk about some of the more technical aspects. And then now I will ask Don to talk about kind of the different models of what different ways we can go and what we could incorporate in a new reach code.
Okay, so since this is hitting the first time we've talked about this with the commission as a whole, the subcommittee's been working. We've had discussions with Renew and also with SCVE, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and also our council liaison. So to reiterate, the basic idea is to work on updating our website and planning for public outreach sessions here in the next few weeks. We would like to have the public outreach sessions in late May in preparation for the end of June, a study session with City Council. So what Laura and I discussed as a subcommittee and would like to do is get some basic feedback from the commission at this point on the various types of options that can be included in the reach codes. These are essentially, we'll be reaching out to the public for their input on these as well. So this is sort of the first trial of it to get some additional ideas in the formulation of concepts that may want to be brought forward in the council study session. The way the reach codes work, there's two ways of going. One is that it could be as a reach on top of the building codes. The building code is renewed every 3 years. And so when you reach on top of the building codes or your ordinance adds to the building codes, those have to be renewed, if you will, or with the new building code, those expire. And so they would have to be redone every 3 years. The other option is to put them into the municipal code in an ordinance fashion that is not tied to the reach codes, and then it would be put into in the municipal code in a fashion that this is the standard of the city, but you have to meet at least the building code requirements. So the building codes may change, but these standards that the city sets would then last until they're removed from the municipal code. Our initial feeling is, although they're both options, it does provide some flexibility or not flexibility, but it provides so that the city doesn't have to go through this every 3 years. So one thing that a lot of the cities in our vicinity are doing now is they're looking at doing this through the municipal code rather than an addition or a reach on top of the building code. The questions that we want to talk about is the building code is with new construction. And so there are several things in new construction that you can do. Our current reach code is that we prohibit gas service to buildings except for comfort appliances, cooking and comfort appliances. And the new reach codes or building codes that would be included would reach beyond that. So in other words, if we wanted to go beyond what we're currently doing, we could consider things like all electric buildings not providing the exceptions for cooking and comfort appliances. we could also have that all electric go beyond the building envelope to the parcel. In other words, that gas service can't be to the parcel. And that's a step again beyond the building code, because the building code is just the building envelope. And the third possibility is basically you don't enact a reach code and you just rely on the building code. The building code, what will go in effect in 2023, has increased a little bit from what it was in the previous code. In other words, now in the new edition, your heating for either water or air conditioning or air of the building envelope would have to be through electric. So that's an enhancement in the code, but it's a step less than what we're currently requiring in our current reach code. So we can advance it or step back from it. This is a difficult subject, and I hope you can just bear with me here on this a little bit. The building code only applies to new construction. And so there's the issue of how do you address remodels and additions. Our current reach that we currently have in place says that when you demolish the structure of the building, and either you remove the foundation, it's obviously new construction, or if you build on the existing foundation, it would be considered new construction as well. The reach could be that we say that after so many square feet of a remodel, then the code is triggered that the entire structure, the entire building then would have to be all electric. So you can set the limits on what triggers the reach code to enact for remodels and reconstruction. Remodels could also be on a square footage, or an addition could be on a square footage basis, or you could have, if there is an addition that's over 50, remodel that's over 50% of the building square footage, or an addition over so many square feet, then the whole building would come under the reach code. I'm going to stop there for a minute because I'm sure people have questions, because I probably bungled the explanation about, and get some ideas and input from the commission as to where we would like to see this go, or what are our current ideas that we would like to include in options that we would present to the public and to the city council. Please ask some questions.
Yeah, and I think overall, like, we're just trying to get a general sense of which way do you think we should be moving? How much should we be expanding the reach or not? What type of model should we think about a municipal or a building? So I think Rashina, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First off, I was just curious about the subcommittee, and since it seems Commissioner Klein is no longer with the Environmental Commission, is there a plan to add on another member, since
so we're going to get there after this.
Okay, so that's a separate, and I'm not by no means volunteering myself. I see some other folks who are very, very much shall we say would be qualified to serve on that. My leaning, and I guess it's I guess it's just a comment answering to some of your requests for feedback, Don. My thought is that, you know, given that we've been able to get this one level of reach code for a certain very small percentage of remodel rebuilds, even a small percentage of rebuilds, since, you know, we had to exclude, I don't know how many, if it's 4 or more, or however many more, we were able to, I forget. I mean, it was based on, you know, whether it's a single family home or versus a multi-family dwelling. My thought would be to kind of expand that rather than reach more specifically, you know, to expand it definitely to the 50% or more remodel. I think that's a number that the city uses anyways to define whether a home it's considered a remodel versus a new home. So maybe that's one way of really getting a lot more of the homes under the, you know, get the big things out of there, you know, our heaters, our water heater, etc. And then the other thing that is in the climate action plan is there's several things in the climate action plan that may touch on this, but one is the demolition, where instead of doing sent to landfill or whatever, to do a deconstruction rather than a demolition, which we did it when we had to do our home. And I feel that was a really positive direction to go, and it was definitely beneficial tax-wise as well. So maybe that's, I would lean on those two things, both to target the demolition aspect of it and then to get as many homes as we can under the current reach code before making it tighter, because, you know, we had some amount of opposition for some of the provisions. So, you know, if you're okay with just leaving maybe gas for cooking, whatever else some people have strong opinions on, but get the big, you know, as much under the umbrella of the reach code. That's would be my vote.
So to clarify, the reach code that we have implemented and are looking at relates specifically to the energy code. So my understanding is that deconstruction.
Okay, so that's separate. Yeah, I'd asked that question before. Sorry.
Is part of green building code,
It's
which
different. Okay. Got it.
okay, so that's incorporating more remodels, or, you know, remodels triggering the requirements.
Some of those triggers could be, as like I discussed, a square footage or trigger. The other trigger that has been talked about broadly in the industry is when you're doing work on the remodel or the addition, if it includes the mechanical and appliances of the building, then that could be a trigger as well. So it depends on how you define the trigger.
And this is where it will be important for us to be working with staff, or staff to be, you know, providing the feedback. They're the ones who are doing the building process, the applications, the permitting, what sense in that flow. So Bruno, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just a couple clarifying questions, I guess. So could you clarify for me, Don, what implications there would be for the city to change the municipal code versus doing reach codes on every 3 years?
The building code, if you go the building code route where if you go the municipal code route where it's not tied directly to the building code, then it stays in the municipal code until it's changed. So it would have to be a specific, this is my understanding, and this is some of the things that we have to discuss with staff and also the city attorney. But my understanding is that once it's in the municipal code, it stays until there's another ordinance that removes it. Whereas if it's tied to the building code expires every 3 years. And so therefore you have to reintroduce an ordinance and pass the ordinance for the new building code, which lasts for 3 years.
Right. So I think so the REACH code, we can enact changes that will be incremental over a period of 10 or 15 years. If we change the municipal code, the changes we make would be somewhat permanent for quite a while, and they would have to be a little bit more aggressive, I guess, if we want to follow the targets in the cap.
Yes, they could be. There's things that I would have to investigate in looking into this, and one is that with the municipal code, you may be able to set trigger dates. In other words, on such and such a date, the new building or the new building cannot have this type thing.
Right.
That I'm not certain of. That's something that we can investigate as we get further down the line. The other part of that is that the municipal code, the building code would supersede the municipal code. So if you don't have something, say like you permit cooking with gas, but then a later edition of the building code says that's not permitted, then the building code would supersede that portion of the municipal code. That's my understanding of how it would work. But again, this is all subject to review with staff and council, and the city attorney and so on.
So there is a little bit more flexibility maybe in continuing to work on the REACH codes on a regular basis.
Yeah, there could be more flexibility. You could always, amend your municipal code, every so many years as well.
Right. So the other question I had about the REACH codes, last time it was just, as you said, for the envelope, the house itself, not for the parcel. Could we extend to the parcel as part of the REACH codes in terms of what we put in there or not? Or would that have to be something different, like in the municipal code, for example?
I believe you could also do that in the REACH code and to the building code. Although again, this is subject to my rudimentary knowledge.
Because I think depending on what can be done this time around, if there are things we can't do with the REACH codes, but we would like to do anyway for the city, maybe there is a way of doing it through the municipal code as well. So we could do, depending what can be done uniquely in some ways with the REACH codes, we could always add something in the municipal code if we wanted to really have it, but couldn't do it as part of the REACH codes.
Mix and match approach.
What's that?
Mix and match approach.
Right.
And that's another approach as well in the options that we could provide options to the, outline some basic options and ordinances, and then provide, have the Environmental Commission review those options and make recommendations on them. But again, leave the options on the table, if you will, for the public workshop and ultimately the city council.
So I'll leave it there with my questions. I have some comments about what was in the packet and some suggestions, but I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask questions.
Go ahead, Carl.
Sure. My first question was just what are the hurdles we face to adding something to municipal code? And then also, do we have any statistics about remodels in Los Altos, like what % it typically is, just so that we know how much will be covered? Or is there a way that we can find those?
We can definitely find those. I don't think you mean how many homes a year basically are remodeled at a 50% level or something like that.
Right, just getting to how impactful that would be.
I don't think we asked that yet.
Well, we had actually, we asked that for the cap. And I think it's worth revisiting and making sure we have the newer data, 2020 and 2021 data. But if I remember well, and I think Rashina and Don can correct me, I think it's anywhere between 65 and 85 new homes in Los Altos every year and about 150 remodels. So you're looking at, best case 250 homes being affected by the REACH codes every year, if you include remodels. Otherwise, only less than 100.
And my recollection as well, Bruno, was that the remodels weren't, they didn't have them defined by what percentage of the house was being remodeled or how many square feet were involved. It was just sort of remodels.
Right. So I think if you look within the concept of the cap, which is to basically reach carbon neutrality in Los Altos, including as it pertains to energy in some ways, I think you need to be able to turn everything around in 15 years, less than 15 years, actually, in 13 years. So I think the REACH code is a big step forward, but it's not the only one that we will have to take to be able to get there. But it's a huge step for sure, especially if we include remodels.
And Carl, I think the other question was what hurdles might be in place to enact a municipal code ordinance? I don't know if we know that yet. I think my thought would be that because it's more permanent and you may be looking farther ahead, that there's going to be more stretch goals, and that's going to invite maybe more people seeing things like perhaps a gas ban or other elements that are perhaps more controversial or more stretch, and so that there's going to be maybe more concern about that in the building and public community. That would be my guess. But
I mean, the other question is, there are a lot of things that could be included in the REACH codes, but again, the benefit of the REACH code is that it can be incremental. So, and it's always a little bit challenging to try to implement too many things at once. So I think it's a question of, especially with feedback from the community, to decide how far we want to go this time around and what we want to include. Because I think one of the things you could do also is say, for a kitchen remodel, you have specific guidelines. If you have a kitchen remodel, for example, that could be part of the REACH codes. If you have bathrooms remodel, you can have a different set of guidelines without going into the, how much of the house is being remodeled. You can have specific guidelines for specific types of remodels, which are fairly frequent, actually. And then the other one is, can you include end-of-life guidelines for appliances also in the REACH code? Because that would be another useful step. So if you have to replace your water heater, your only option is to have a heat pump water heater. If you want to replace your furnace, your only option is to have a heat pump furnace. Well, it's not a furnace, it's a heat pump. So I think these are all the things that I'm sure you've been discussing, but I think that's should be considered, I think.
and this is going to be an iterative process, obviously. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just to Carl's point, maybe is what is the difference in effort and chances of success on a muni versus a REACH code? And maybe it's because I'm new. I'm not clear on what it takes for the city to implement either. But I think that would be good information to have.
Tom, I'll try to address that in general. The process is very similar. They both take ordinances, and ultimately they're both modifying the municipal code, but different areas of it. So the process is, in things like this, there's typically a study session with the council, which we're scheduling for, or we'd like to hit end of June date. And the reason for that is the council takes vacation in July. So we want to hit the end of June for that date so that we can prepare the codes so that then they can be discussed in the public forum. The public council has to, or the city council has to agendize the ordinance, and there's a public hearing on the ordinance. So that would be what you would shoot for in the August, September timeframe. Once that public hearing occurs, the council can take my understanding is two general actions. If they generally are in agreement and only have minor suggestions and changes to the ordinance that's presented, then they can move on that to incorporate certain revisions, and then it can be passed as a consent calendar item as part of the second reading. If they have significant questions or comments or changes to what's presented in the public hearing, then it has to go back for another first reading. So that's the process, a first reading, and then the second reading is basically the acceptance of it. In the case of a REACH code, then that ordinance goes to the State Energy Commission, and they have to approve that change, because any change you make to the building code has to be cost effective. And the California Energy Commission then has to certify that. It typically takes 30 to 60 days, and that has to be done before the ordinance can go into effect. And that's the reason for the September timeframe. If it's a municipal code change and it's not linked to the building code, then after it's approved, I think it can take effect within 30 days. And it does not have to be approved by the Energy Commission.
Well, thanks for that summary. I think that helps a bit, and also kind of gives me an idea that this is there's a lot of work to get done to get it done by September.
Yeah, don't take me verbatim, because I'll be corrected by staff and the city attorney, I think, before this is all done. It's all part of, presenting things and getting them reviewed and everything else.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's
Well,
sort of the
don't worry, I couldn't quote you verbatim anyway.
general flow.
I guess then my other question is, do the people on the subcommission have a recommendation about where they would want to go, or is that up to the whole environmental committee? Or is there any guidance any feelings you guys have at this point?
So
I don't know who was on the subcommittee.
So right now it's just Don and I, because the third member is no longer in the commission. So that's why we're going to ask for new volunteers. I would say at this point, I don't, no, we don't have a recommendation yet. And we've heard that part of our recommendation needs to be based on input from the public outreach. So again, like I'm saying, it is going to be an iterative process of, yes, we need to get to a point where we can lay out some options for the public to react to, but what we end up bringing back, and then that will keep coming back to the commission and getting and refining, I would think. And again, after we get comments from the council at the study session. So, but yes, I think what Don and I are envisioning is having kind of a menu laid out, in trying to make it understandable. So simplifying it a little bit, but not making it too wonky, but kind of general scope of different ways, different directions, different scope, in terms of remodel, and then using that to get the feedback and refine as we go. So I think I would suggest that we, take that kind of initial feedback and go forward with that. as we are working to, again, start the public outreach process and working with SVC on that material.
Laura and I appreciate the feedback at this level. This is obviously the first discussion on this topic, so it's part education of all of the commissioners. Other things that that you as individuals can be thinking about for our next discussion on this could be reach codes can apply to existing buildings as well. And so there's things that you can put in existing buildings. However, each one of these becomes more sensitive to the public, if you will. I'll use that term, I guess. But it could be things that like no extensions of gas piping within a building, or what Bruno was alluding to is that you could put that, well, if you get a building permit to do work on your water heating or your heating and ventilating, geez, it has to be heat pump technology. So there's things like that that you can do for existing buildings. You have to remember that Los Altos, although we're primarily 90% plus residential, single-family residential community, we do have some commercial, and we do have some multifamily residences, and those take different thoughts when you're thinking about this as well. Like no cooking with gas is sensitive to commercial people as well as residential. So each one has a little bit different. And the last thing I'll say, because our discussions in future meetings will be on this topic, and as well as it'll be on the topic of the Green Building Code. And the Green Building Code, again, is a section of the building code that's every 3 years. So you can do this in either a municipal code or the municipal code building section. And the green building will be primary related to EV infrastructure development. And we can talk about that more at a later meeting. So both the Title 24 energy and also the EV infrastructure would have our concept would be to present both of these to the public for discussion and council for consideration. I better stop, Laura, or we'll go down a rabbit hole.
As this item is really wants us to do. Okay, so our subcommittees generally can be up to 3 commissioners due to not having a majority. So because this is a large amount of work and we need a lot of heads, I would like to open it up and see if there's any other commissioners who are interested in serving on the Reach Code Subcommittee. And I will just note that we're going to be doing the same. We're also going to be looking at reforming the CAP Subcommittee just to ensure that that the people who are continuing to work on it are the people who want to work on that subcommittee as well. We're going to have a single-use plastic subcommittee, so this is not your only shot. So I think Don and I are pretty committed to continuing on with this for the continuity of the experience that we had last time. But if we have one more commissioner who would like to join, that would be great. Oh, thank you. All right, Tom, you sure you know what you're getting into?
No, yeah, I was going to say, I don't really know what I'm getting into.
That's all right.
All right. So I guess
I think your experience will be super helpful. so the process, we'll just start, you'll just start getting invited to some of the things that we already have set in motion. And then obviously we'll touch base with you on going forward. Thank you. And Don, I shouldn't speak for you, but I'm assuming that you want to continue.
Yeah, I signed up for this, I guess.
All right, and before we move on, I want to see if there's any public comment on reach codes. Okay. Now we have our climate action and adaptation plan, and Bruno has put together, or the subcommittee has put together, you know, trying to come up with the action items that to focus on implementing this year. And so this was included in your packet. Yes, Don.
Before we switch, I had one other thing I just wanted to pass on here, and it's really for Renew, and it's regarding the reach codes. There's to check to make sure that the city has submitted their letter of interest for the bringing reach codes to the council, because SCVE offers $10,000 in assistance to the city for that. And so I'd like you to follow up to make sure that that letter has been submitted.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so Bruno, would you like to, do you have anything to walk us through here on the proposed 2022 actions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to get started, and I think Don and Rashina can do it too. I apologize because I have some connection problems with my computer. I'm doing it from the phone right now, so it's a little bit different for me than doing it on the computer. I don't know if Ranu can share the two slides.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll just share it out of the packet. Is that good?
Yeah, we can see.
I mean, yeah, I'm on the small screen, so I'm trying to figure out exactly. So the first one was about the reach code. I think we went through that because you know, obviously when there is a new subcommittee member, so I think we can move on to the next one. So the next action item, or you know, the next CAP action actually for 2022 that was identified and is suggested actually by the subcommittee would be the development of the yearly EV Fair program. And I think maybe Don can elaborate on that because he's been in touch with Greentown. I can tell you that a lot of these actions were discussed with the city manager, and that's kind of the outcome of the discussions we've had with him also, are included in these two slides. And most of these action is very favorable for us to move forward with it. But Don, maybe you want to maybe mention where we are with the EV Fair program?
Yeah, I talked with the president of Greentown Los Altos, and he and the organization is interested in working with the city to put on an EV program, schedule it, put together you know, the outline for it, and work with the city to get it off the ground. So there's interest there, and I think that if someone here on the commission wants to work with Greentown and their group, and also I guess it would be through Renew and the city to get their assistance. But I think when we talked with Gabe, he was saying that, you know, the city can certainly provide venue and assistance with announcements and marketing the plan, but they would need assistance from the the Environmental Commission and Greentown, obviously, to actually hold and accomplish the event.
No, I think we would like to make sure there is an EC liaison. I don't think we need a whole subcommittee for that, but at least someone from the Environmental Commission that would be able to liaise between Greentown, Los Altos, and the city, and get moving on this this action, which will happen. The idea is to have the EV fair every year, and just for people, just to remind you of what we had discussed as part of the CAP, is to have an EV fair where not only Los Altos residents with EVs could come, bring their EV and discuss their experience with their EV, but also in that case invite local dealership to bring their EVs also to show them to the public.
So I guess my only concern about this is, I mean, I think Greentown is well aware as well that Actera has a pretty strong EV ambassador program with lots of events throughout the area. Now, they're not specifically, you know, sometimes they come to Los Altos, but they're not specifically, you know, right in our town usually. So I think I would just want to make sure that who's ever working on this would evaluate whether it makes you get more bang for your buck by partnering with those existing events and amplifying them versus, you know, recreating a similar thing but specifically in Los Altos. So that would be my only feedback there. And they do, you know, things that are, they'll do ones that are specific to financing and charging, you know, workshops on charging and all of that. So, but that said, if we, I guess what we're asking for now is a volunteer to work on that program.
I'll add that Greentown's also aware of Actera. In fact, that was, I remiss that I didn't mention that, but they're aware of that and figure that what they can do in partnership. And so it's really trying to develop a program that makes sense for all. And is the best program that can be presented to the community or communities.
I'm willing to step up to this role with a little more direction in terms of first steps.
Great, thank you, Carl.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good fit, you know, in terms of the, you know, publicity side and getting the word out. So yes, we can certainly provide some support in terms of, you know, getting a little bit more detail on what's needed. So, okay, so should we move on? I'm a little concerned about, you know, going through each of these actions one by one. I think, and having a long discussion on each of them. I don't know if there's some of them that are a little bit easier to.
Well, I think some can be, we can talk about some fairly fast.
Okay.
So some obviously will require setting up a subcommittee, so probably will require a little bit more of a discussion. So the next one was about the off-road gas equipment, gas engines. We're talking about lawnmowers, gas leaf blowers, and so on, mostly gardening equipment. So there is a bill, a state bill, which will be technically will be effective as of January 2024 or later. So that's the issue with the bill, is that it's not earlier than January 2024, and it could be much later than that depending on what happens. So I think that's one of the actions that were in the CAP. Also, that's one we could start working on. We've had, as I mentioned, we reviewed all these actions with Gabe, the city manager. And that's one action where we believe, and he believes also, that the first step probably would be to try do something about an ordinance that we already have in Los Altos, which bans gas leaf blowers. And it's been in place for several years. And obviously it hasn't had any real effect because it's not really enforced. So I think one thing we could do is, as a first step, try to revisit that ban on gas leaf blowers and find ways of communicating to the community and to the gardeners in Los Altos, and maybe find some ways of having them switch equipment, whether it's financing, whether it's another method, whatever it is. And I think if that can be done, let's say this year and maybe next year, I don't know how long it's gonna take, then we can tackle the next step, which should expand it to other gardening appliances that use gas engines. But for that, obviously, I think it's a reasonable amount of work. We probably will need a subcommittee to do that.
So I would make a proposal, given the subcommittees that we're already probably going to form. I would suggest that, not to kick this down the road, but that we maybe agendize this for later in the year. But I'm happy to entertain if there's a subcommittee who's really raring to get started now. And I will also say that Greentown, and specifically Linda Ziff, has done a huge amount of work with the public, with the city, on advertising and not advertising, getting the word out about the current leaf blower ban and how we can get working with the police to get better enforcement. So I think step one would be to, be with Greentown, with her, and get some of the benefit of her experience of what has worked, what hasn't worked, and to go from there in terms of, broadening the scope, potentially broadening the scope for other off-road engines, or, other garden equipment. So my recommendation, like I said, would be to not form the subcommittee yet, but happy to have dissent if anybody wants
So
to.
there's a couple things, sorry, if I may. I think that may be somewhat related. I mean, I guess they relate to landscape. There's this, and then there's something either further down, or something that we discussed with Gabe as well, in terms of the pesticide or inorganic herbicide pesticide ban. So there's certain things that kind of maybe go together, and it's maybe makes sense to just talk about it now and then form a subcommittee at our next meeting or down the line. But maybe there's one subcommittee that speaks to some of the things that that work on the landscape end, and then so maybe not one subcommittee for each thing that's on the list, but a few broader ones that maybe touch on a few different things. So maybe I agree that maybe we push it down the line for when we have more time, but then we also look at some of the other things that are happening, and then we can kind of have the sum list of the subcommittees that may need to form at a later date. But again, that being said, I think some of these things are important for us to get working on, or have eyes on the project sooner rather than later, if we want to do anything meaningful through the end of the year.
Okay, so yes, I think we should, keep this on our work plan for the year, and perhaps form the subcommittee at, like you say, at a later meeting. So we can move on.
Okay, so moving on the task force, I'm not going to talk about it. We've had discussions about it. We've decided to wait on this, especially since this year is going to be a fairly busy year with the REACH codes and so on. The next one is the ban on single-use plastics. There was a subcommittee in place. The council following the recommendation of the EC, decided to wait on that back at the end of 2020 because of COVID-19. And I think it's time to revisit it. I think the city manager is very open-minded about it, very favorable, actually. Jan Fernandez would like, if the EC wanted to take the lead on that and work with staff to revisit that ban, especially since many cities around Los Altos have already banned single-use plastics. I think now that we kind of starting to be more in the normal phase with COVID, I think it might not be a bad idea for us to restart work on this. So I think the question here is, we have a subcommittee in place. Do we want to reform it? So that's.
Right. And yeah, this is where the cap, because it's, incorporates everything that we do pretty much. When we talk about the cap, we're talking about our other work items. So I think we should maybe just go ahead and do the single-use plastics discussion now, which was a separate item. But so I've done a little bit of a sleuthing on the single-use plastics, and I think, our next step, and I agree we need to form a subcommittee to do this, is to go back and touch base with the business community. We had done, the city had done a survey and reached out to the business community the last time we were investigating. And I think we need to update that and go back again and get some input on what their concerns and considerations would be. So I would recommend we form a subcommittee for that as well. So is anybody interested in the single-use plastic subcommittee? And
Well, I was already on the subcommittee. I'm happy to remain on that subcommittee if it's okay with everyone.
that'd be great. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I was on that subcommittee as well, and I guess I have the knowledge of the ordinances, at least at this point. I can, if there's a lot of interest, I can either continue to serve, or if there's a lot of interest, I can step aside and let somebody else work with Bruno and others.
I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down. Let me see. Anybody else interested in?
I view this as something that's going to take place after we get over the hurdle with reach codes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we can begin some of, like I say, some of the outreach, but I don't see writing, having an ordinance in process and being written for a little bit. So that timing would work out. And I will go ahead as well and join that subcommittee, unless, check one more time if anybody else is waving their hand. No. All right. Okay. So that subcommittee will be Bruno, Don, and myself. Okay. Next action, energy
Yeah.
audits.
So the other one was the residential and commercial energy audits. Having a support system for people that are interested in doing it. And so the idea originally was to set up a web page on the Los Altos website with a source of information, which would be useful for people to refer to get contractors, to get people that can do the audits for them and so on. So I think that's part of a more general goal, which is to facilitate the switch from gas appliances to electric appliances. So the first step is obviously doing the energy audits, figuring out what doesn't work, what can be improved, and then the second step would be to replace appliances, obviously. So, by itself, it's obviously one action, but it's actually part of a more global action, which has to do with switching. what I can say, and Rashina and Don, you can chime in on this one, but I think at this stage, we would like some more time at the subcommittee, the CAP subcommittee level, to explore other options, other ideas, other alternatives. I've been in touch with Block Power, which is a one-stop shop that has been working on switching in multifamily homes, in commercial buildings, and also as a contract with the, well, not a contract, but I guess a contract with the city of Ithaca in New York. Menlo Park is also looking into using Block Power, and we're also looking at a pay-as-you-go system whereby, one of the challenges in terms of switching from one gas appliance to an electric appliance is the cost, the original cost. So there are also some pay-as-you-go systems that could be available. So I think probably what we would like to do at the subcommittee level is have a little bit more time to look at the options and bring something back to the AC once we've had a chance to review all the options and see what's feasible for Los Santos and what would be the most effective and most efficient.
Okay, so keep that in the CAT subcommittee. That's good.
Right. Next one has to do with the energy efficiency audits of the city buildings. That again, we had a discussion with the city manager. I think he was very positive about it, wants to do it. So I think it's just going to be a matter of following up with the staff and make sure that happens at some point. And there is a list of providers that can do that for the city that we have also put together at the subcommittee level, which would be available.
Okay.
Next page.
Yeah.
Ah.
Maybe Rashina or Don, you want to take over?
You're doing fine, Bruno.
Gosh, I can barely read on my phone what I'm looking at. Okay, so if you see me,
if you want, I could take over for a
yeah,
bit.
why don't you take over, Rashina? That would be great. Thank you.
I know how frustrating it is if you don't have all your devices that we're so reliant on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is the urban forest master plan. Oh, wow, that's I guess my favorite thing. So urban forest master plan, so it's timely. So this one, again, it's something that I think Gabe was very much in favor of, given all the challenges we've seen with our city trees, and then all the discussions that I've had with the Hewlett Packard parking lot situation, some other things with what we need to have a plan for the trees in our city, as well as we do have a goal of planting a certain number of trees as part of the CAP. So this is something that I think will require a subcommittee that could then work with figuring out what's going on in cities around us and what's feasible, and then working with our own I forget the name of the gentleman we work with.
Manny?
Yes.
Manny.
Yes, Manny. Exactly. So that's one thing that I think, and this could potentially be tied in with some of the other landscape things, if it makes sense. If it's too much to form too many subcommittees, but it could be a standalone subcommittee as well. Do we want to talk about this now? I could just go on and discuss what the other two things on the list. The all-year farmers market was something that was of interest. It was discussed during the hearing for the CAP, and I think it's something that is more a matter of someone to work with LAVA, the Los Altos Village Association, who runs a farmers market, and figure out what it needs, what needs to get done to to see if we can move that to a full year farmers market, as opposed to
I have to say that one does not particularly strike me as an EC subcommittee.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's just, the sustainability coordinator can work with Lava and figure out what needs to get done in order to make that happen. So it should be straightforward, I would think. And then the last one, I think we just pushed down because we figured there's much on the plate, as well as given the sad situation we've been in the last couple of years. There is already a stock of the N95 masks, hopefully in every household. So
I think you may not be able to see the top of your screen because there were a couple more actions established.
what did I miss?
The alternative work schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So those are I guess, sorry, I for some reason thought that they'd already been discussed, but yeah, those three, the top three are things that, are more working with the city and cities policies, and Gabe was really, really supportive of all of them. Go ahead, Bruno, you may recall more than I do on those.
So
No, I think you're doing fine. I think you
Yeah.
it's just that these are city policies that we discussed with Gabe at the meeting.
Yeah.
At one of the subcommittee meetings. I think in terms of the work schedule and all that stuff, he has already something in place. So that's what an action,
Right.
that was an action of the CAP. And it's actually in some ways already taken care of. And I think they're going towards a hybrid type work schedule where employees will have to spend 2 or 3 days in the city at the office, but not like 100% of their time. And some can get exemptions as well to go beyond that, depending on the type of work that they will do. So a fairly flexible work policy, which is in line with what we wanted to achieve in the CAP in terms of action. And then the zero waste policy for city facilities, we decided to wait for the next sustainability coordinator to be on board, because that's something that we will need the sustainability coordinator to be able to work with staff to set up those policies. So that's one is stable for the moment until we have someone full time. And then the CAP goal into the city project, that's more of a long-term goal, also long-term action from the CAP. And again, we will need the sustainability coordinator to be able to manage this. It's not something that will be done very quickly. It's going to take some time. The only thing I would add is about, in terms of subcommittees on that particular slide, is discussing whether we want to set up a subcommittee to start working on the urban forest master plan. And we can actually also weave into that subcommittee the non-organic herbicides and pesticides also.
So we have. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So just on the integrate CAP goals, again, that was something that Gabe was very supportive of. So I think it's, I just don't know how we as Environmental Commission figure out a way to work with the city on that. But maybe it's something that, we could chat about either this time or the next time around, because it's an opportunity to really change the way a lot of the things at the city are done, and then just get a lot more done when we have the momentum.
Yeah, and I do think that's an area that it's going to be pretty crucial to have a full-time sustainability coordinator, because that's really to have that interface.
Right.
So I think, at this point, we're here to provide support if there's something we can do, but we're not leading anything at this point.
Yeah.
I think, for the urban forest master plan, I guess my feeling is that's an area I would want to get some council input. And, we have our joint committee coming up, whether, we don't necessarily as a commission go off and say, well, now we're going to develop this master plan if this is not something that I know it's part of the cap, so it is de facto kind of been adopted, but is this the priority right now for this commission? I don't know whether it
So-
is or isn't.
If I may interject here, I believe the city manager had a meeting with Greentown and Gary Heddle being if I am getting his name correct, at Greentown regarding the urban tree canopy and tree management type plans. And he had kind of guided me into possibly talking to the Greentown contact and incorporating this going down the road into the Environmental Commission's work plan. So I have as staff scheduled a call with Gary at Greentown for tomorrow, and then I'll report back. So if you want to actually make a subcommittee the next meeting, or want to consider whether that's the route you want to go, I can agendize it for that as well.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, any other feedback from the rest of the commission on the proposed actions and the direction we're going with, how we're gonna work on each one? And I also just want to check in if the CAP subcommittee has a sense of, do you foresee your subcommittee continuing to work this year as a subcommittee and beyond, or is at some point it's going to morph into all these other different subcommittees? Have you talked about that at all?
We haven't really talked about that specifically. I think, as I mentioned, for example, in terms of switching and bringing something forward to the city as a potential plan to help community members make the switch. I think that's something that the subcommittee would like to continue to explore and come up with some kind of ideas that can be run can be presented to the EC, and depending on what the EC decides, could move forward towards some kind of an agreement with the city and the city council in particular. I think the key about the CAP subcommittee here, we're looking just at the proposed 2022 actions. Obviously, the CAP has many actions that we need to be implemented on every year there will be some new actions to implement. So the real question for the EC is whether they want the CAP subcommittee to remain as is or change it to continue to manage the implementation of the plan global. I mean, more in general, right? So I think that's a question for you and the EC to discuss.
Well, I think in general, we form our subcommittees kind of based on interest in and volunteer. So, I think we can throw the question open if there's somebody who hasn't been participating on the subcommittee who really would like to, then please go ahead and express that, and then we could.
I'll offer that right now the committee is basically the committee that helped develop the CAP, which was Bruno, myself, and Rashina. And I got a full plate with a couple of things, so I'm more than willing to allow opportunities for others on this subcommittee. And certainly I can, certainly I'll continue to provide input as the commissioner and so on, and always available. But if there's others that would like to work on implementation of the CAP, I'll be happy to provide the space for that to occur.
If I may, through the chair, Chair Texler, just to clarify, can you hear me, Laura?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Just to clarify, if Dawn is stepping down from this CAP subcommittee and someone else is stepping on to avoid a Brown Act violation, I recommend that you redefine the purpose of the CAP subcommittee. And it sounds like you are doing that right now, where the original CAP subcommittee really focused on developing the plan and getting it adopted. So now you're disbanding that subcommittee and creating a new subcommittee to focus on implementation.
Right. Do we have to call it something different, or is that?
Nope, it's just the scope. You just need to make sure the scope is different from what it was if Dawn is stepping down, because then you'd have a fourth person on that subcommittee. So this is a brand new subcommittee, still a subset of the CAP.
Okay, well, so the question stands. Is there any other commissioners who'd like to participate on the CAP implementation subcommittee?
Certainly interested in helping with implementation in some way. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll form a new subcommittee with Rashina, Bruno, and Carl for the CAP implementation. Wonderful, thank you for all that. Exciting to have all that work on our plates. And do we have any public comment on the CAP? Scroll down here. Okay, we will move on, and we did cover our single-use plastic item already. Wait, did we get a subcommittee on that one?
Yeah, we have one, I believe.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you. I'm losing track here. Too many. All right. So now we have our work plan. And so this is basically any other items aside from the ones that we just discussed that are on our work plan that have any actions going on that commissioners like to discuss. Yes, Don.
I have a comment on the work plan. I was looking at our, I guess, two observations, and they center around the situation that we're approaching with the drought and water conservation measures. And all indications is we're going to be seeing regulations coming out from Valley Water and Cal Water regarding water conservation measures. And so I really want to encourage that we get our dashboard on the EC dashboard that has the measurements for water conservation and several other measures. There's about 4 there. I think we have water, electricity, natural gas, and something else. But I really think it'd be important to focus on getting that updated, and because I really think this commission is going to be faced with or should be helping with the announcements and spreading the word on water conservation measures. I think the first step is to get maybe somebody that has interest in that area, and then the second part is to make sure that we're up to date so that we can track how our residents are conserving.
Yes, and in the past, we've had one commissioner who kind of helped get the data from Cal Water and, then worked with the PIO to get it on the dashboard. So it would be great to kind of reestablish that. It hasn't been a subcommittee in the past. It's kind of been one individual.
Laura, could you clarify what PIO stands for?
Oh, Public Information Officer, sorry.
It's okay. This is something I could probably help with. I'm definitely interested in being able to help get info to the public. So
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Don, did you ever do this role? I'm wondering if you could provide any.
No, I haven't. I was involved in on the periphery of it, but other commissioners had followed through, and I think through Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the energy data is available, and through Cal Water, and I don't know who the current contact is on Cal Water. I know the previous contact, but I haven't heard his name mentioned lately, so he may have retired. I'm not sure. But it's establishing a connection with the Cal Water and with Silicon Valley Clean Energy to get the data, and then just work with the CIO officer to get it posted. Then I think that's the second part of that, Laura, is really, I think maybe not for this meeting, but we ought to think about how we're going to assist in information. That's one step. And the second step is how are we going to assist with information on the ongoing drought situation and conservation efforts.
Right, and in the past, we've done that, you know, tracked based on the severity of the drought. We've tracked how much we do. So I agree that that's likely to be something we're going to be facing this.
And in the past, we did tabling at like the farmers markets and other types of announcements, but I think we better start thinking about how to get that back rolling.
So maybe we'll have that on the agenda for next month to have a bit more of a discussion about what efforts we want to do for water conservation.
So on the work plan, I don't know what we really want to include in the work plan, if it's just stuff that we're gonna for sure be working on in 2022, or do we need to add stuff that we will be exploring as well in 2022? Because you know, the actions that we discussed just a few minutes ago, you know, the ban on non-organic pesticide and herbicide, there is already one active right now for the city of Los Santos, which is for herbicides, but we wanted to add non-organic pesticides as well. We had that discussion with the city manager. He's very open to it, but I think they have issues, challenges managing the ban, their own ban on non-organic herbicides. So I think it would be worth actually having some kind of a subcommittee or an EC contact or an EC liaison, probably a subcommittee, and maybe include the urban master plan into this, because I think it's part of the same issue, is how do we green our city? And starting with what the city manages specifically. And then take a look at what it will take, so at least we can show the council what we are thinking about, what we would like to do, and what it will take. For example, an urban master plan will take a consultant, so it's going to take a budget. In terms of helping the city manage not using chemical pesticides and herbicides, it may also take a consultant to come and consult with the city and give them some ideas on how to manage you know, the green space that they're managing. So I think I have an overall question about the work plan, right? Do we just put a few things in there, or do we try to be as comprehensive as possible, so at least the council has an idea of what we're thinking about and what we're looking into doing?
So the work plan document is what I think we're referring to right now is more of, that's more of our tool for tracking what current committees we have working, and what the current actions that they're taking. It needs some updating right now, because I think there are some items that we may want to, you know, take off, and others that we need to change or put back on. So anyway, I don't think it's reflecting necessarily exactly where we are right now. But this is our working document to track our own efforts. So I think the issue is that we're kind of in a, you know, transitional phase, and we need to have it better reflect what we're going to be doing over the next year.
So, I mean, I would propose that we consider several actions in that work plan that will need to be added to the current work plan, understanding that many will be deleted. So that would be one of them, is having a subcommittee may be established to start thinking about the urban forest master plan, to start thinking about the ban on non-organic pesticides and herbicides potentially. It doesn't have to be established today. It can be established like in a month or two from now.
Well, I think for that one, after Renew meets with Greentown and talks about that part of it, then she'll come back, I'm assuming next month, and we'll maybe have more of a discussion about that next month, and we can fold in or inorganic pesticide, decide whether we want to fold that into the same
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. Yes, I think we did talk about bringing that up at a later date. I have a question, Bruno, if you were done. I
have some other things, but it's
no, go ahead.
the different. No, I mean, I actually, I spent some time looking at the work plan from the Complete Streets Commission. And I noted that they have at least 2 or 3 actions in there that relates to the cap and working with us. So I was wondering if that's something we would want to include in our work plan. So at least, and make sure that we coordinate with them on some of these actions and we have that discussion with them. And I can go through the list if you want, but I think it's in there. And there are several that we should probably consider.
So we had discussed last time, just to add on before you answer, Laura, we discussed last time, what we do if, especially, and this was maybe more specific with the climate action plan, but it could be other things. If we have things that, overlap with other commissions, there is the Complete Streets Master Plan. There's also the,
There's the
Parks and Rec, yeah. Yeah, so there's a couple others that, we may have. So at what point do we discuss how we form those, joint, how we do how we work jointly together on some of those?
So I think that might be a discussion that we could talk generally about as a commission, what are ideas for how we can collaborate that way. But then I would see, once we kind of have that overview, that whoever is, whatever subcommittee has an action that they know is overlapping with Complete Streets, would then that subcommittee would, make outreach and go ahead and do that for that particular thing. So we can, I think that's another discussion item for perhaps next month, although we're getting a long agenda already. Okay, cross commission. And I think as far as updating the work plan, I think I can work with Renew to go through and try and clean it up a bit at this point. And that might help us have a better working list. And this has happened in the past, where we have, older items that kind of straggle on that we need to take off, because we want it to be pretty up to date, but succinct. Okay.
So last point, I just wanted to touch back on what Dawn had brought up about putting more information on the webpage, the education and outreach piece of our web plan. So I think broader, in addition to deating the energy savings and the water savings, I think our web page definitely needs a little bit more of an update. It was already older links still, the older climate action plan, other things. I think we would probably want to, and maybe this is something that we get onto once we have our full-time sustainability coordinator, or if it's something that we get on, we could to in between, is to really update that. So it's a source of information for people to come to
So I think
and access.
Renee's been working on that, right?
Mhm.
Yes, so I've been working with Sonia Lee, the PIO, to even kind of give it a face where we have more of a one-click type of option from the main page of the city's website. I mean, the main city page, to all of the information that is now nested within pages within pages. And there were some items on the page that were updated with the climate, with the Environmental Commission webpage. So the new cap is up, and I don't know if I did go in
Yeah.
there and update the links, but if there was anything that was missed, if you can maybe just give me a pointer to that, and I can also check for myself.
Okay, so maybe we can, I mean, if anyone, is that the guidance, that if anyone has anything that we want to update, we just send it to you, you know, or we see that's missing?
Right. I mean,
It's
I
not
went
something
in
that-
there. Yeah, I went in there and made the updates that needed to be made for it to be current. But if there was something missed, if you can just point it out to me, I'll get it taken care of.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, our last, second to last. So I included in the packet, hopefully you had a chance to look. Every year we meet as a commission with the council to talk about, somewhat to talk about our accomplishments over the past year, but more to discuss what our goals and work plan for the coming year, and make sure that we're aligned with what the council sees as our priorities. So I've put together an outline. I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on the accomplishment part, unless anybody, you know, feels strongly that I've missed something big that we need to include on the accomplishments from last year. I didn't, you know, make them very wordy, because I think that the council is pretty aware of what we've been working on, and the bulk of it was the climate action plan, which they're very aware of that effort. So I didn't think we needed to spend a huge amount of time going into detail there. But if anybody sees any omissions, please do let me know. And then following that is our work plan. I will, under the CAP implementation, incorporate the feedback from tonight in terms of which items we have formed subcommittees, and where we see our efforts going this year, and then the other items that might be a little more staff driven. And then the other subcommittees listed. Obviously, I'm going to add everything that we've discussed tonight. So we'll have, sorry, I'm losing my voice. So we will have, let's see, we already have single-use plastics. I will include the information about, you know, updating the dashboard, and then water conservation, and the, you know, green infrastructure, for lack of a better word. So pretty much everything that we've discussed tonight. But this is basically our opportunity to get feedback from the council about, you know, what we're working on, and to let them know where we're putting our efforts. So just open it up for any feedback on what's missing, or you know, changes that need to be made on the document. just to remind everybody, so the joint council session is actually next Tuesday. I don't think I've gotten our time sent out yet. I'm assuming it's going to be virtual again. Haven't heard any differently. And we should probably get an invitation to all commissioners with the details on that. It's great to have everybody attend if you can. And sometimes, you know, we have discussion and question and answer with the council. So it's a good opportunity to have that dialogue.
So, just for my information, when we are looking at the CAP actions that you want to present to the council as the EC priorities, are we including the line items from the slides that Bruno had, which were identifying the CAP actions from 2022? Because there were other items on there which are not on the list that were in your goals and accomplishments material, Chair Texler.
So I think the question is this list, the CAP subcommittee proposed actions, is not on my work plan list. Is that?
No, the one that you're going to take to the joint commission council session. So I was looking at the 2022-2023 work plan. Yes, that's the one. So
yes, I didn't put it in there because I wanted to have this discussion first to see, because I didn't think we were going to be doing all the items on this list. So I first wanted to know which ones we were actually going to be going forward with. And so that now I can take that and update that section.
Okay, yeah. But in that context, we talked about the dashboard, we talked about information on the water conservation efforts and things like that. But I just wanted to kind of get a sense of whether the line items that were on the slides that Vice Chair Delagnew had were also going to be included.
Yes. So yes,
okay.
That's what, yes. Yes. And that, yeah, that's why I'm saying, you know, now I can take our discussion, because some of them we basically are not going to be working on this year. So I'm not going to include the task force on methane gas because it was, that's
right
on the work plan for this year.
Right. And also, Vice Chair Delagnew also brought this up, and we'd also in our discussion with the city manager, he had sort of emphasized that if there are any kind of action items on which you feel there is a need for funding, to kind of identify that and include that in as part of your work plan information, that funding request, so that then that can be included in the budget, so that there is funding to support those action items. Like, for example, if there was a need to get some consultant help to get the city implement the non-organic pesticide ban as well and help manage the herbicide ban, for example, or to get somebody on board for the urban forest tree canopy and tree management planning effort. So I don't know if that is something you want to think about right now, because the joint session is, again, as you said, is next Tuesday. So.
And my initial thought is that for most of the actions, I don't know that we're far enough along to know what we would need budget wise. You know, yes, certainly creating an urban forest master plan, I would assume, is going to require a consultant, just as the CAP did. So are we in a position where we could know what the scope of that is? I'm not sure that we are.
Okay.
Any other commissioners feel differently? I mean, for me, the only budget item that I could see suggesting or recommending would be perhaps a grant writer to secure funds that are out there for different, you know, different actions that we can take for sustainability, you know, for energy efficiency and that kind of, you know, there's a lot of money out there for those kinds of actions, and, you know, having somebody that could write grants would potentially be somewhere I could see a budget. But other than that, I don't know that I have. But if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
For the benefit of the new commissioners, I may add that that the joint city council EC meeting, typically Laura as chair would present, you know, just a very brief summary of our accomplishments, and then outline our ideas for for priority items for the next coming year, and then receive city council input on their priorities to help us focus our priorities. So it's a combination of us presenting some ideas, taking back feedback, and then Laura and the Environmental Commission would finalize the work plan for the next year based on that feedback.
Okay, I think what I would recommend here is if there's, you know, if there's nothing right now, if you do have it between now and next Tuesday, have something that you think is missing from our work plan or from our list of accomplishments and work plan for next year, you could send it to Renew and she could forward it on to me. So I can make sure that that gets included. But again, it is a discussion, so there's an opportunity to, you know, add things at the meeting if we need to as well. Okay, if there's nothing else on the accomplishments and goals, move on to city staff updates. So, Renew, you're on mute.
So this was just an update on a poster challenge that was recently held for Earth Day. It was sponsored by the Santa Clara Valley Urban Runoff Pollution Prevention Program and co-sponsored by the city for K through 12 students for creating posters for Earth Day. And there is a flyer included in the packet, which gives you more information on what that was about. The entries were due and were to be received by 5 p.m. on Earth Day, which was April 22nd. And I don't know yet what the results of that are because it was just, you know, on the 22nd, but I will report back when we know what the outcomes were in terms of who the winners were and what the posters were. So that was just a staff update for today.
Great, thank you. And any commissioner reports? So we do need to get back in the habit of having commissioners listen to city council meetings. I did listen to one, and I'm trying to remember now what the subject that related to the Environmental Commission, and I'm drawing a complete blank at this point. But so we normally have a running list of city council meetings, and we have a commissioner take each one so that we're listening and making sure we're up to date on what's going on there. So we can reinstitute that practice. I would assume the next council meeting will probably be, since they have our joint session on the 3rd, it would either be the 10th or the 17th, which we will have a meeting before then, so we can figure that out. But if we can put together that schedule again of council meetings so we can assign commissioners to attend, that would be great. Any other commissioner reports? Okay.
I'll add one comment that it's more in the way of an announcement than a report, but on Friday, this Friday, the April 29th at noon, there's going to be a tree planting in Redwood Grove that's going to be, Greentown is putting it on, and the mayor will be there to say a few words along with Greentown. It's approximately the 300th tree that Greentown has planted in its 500 tree program. And so it should be a nice event. And if anybody's available and wants to go see it, should do so. I think that's the summation of that announcement.
And I'll just point out that our next meeting, because it's our regular schedule, is actually in 2 weeks. So I guess in some ways it's good that because we have a lot to discuss at that meeting, but just don't be surprised that we're meeting again soon. Okay, any other items? No? All right. Well, then I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.